I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, May 21st, 2024 regular council meeting of the East Lansing City Council. At the opening, could we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Altman.
Here.
Councilmember Meadows.
Here.
Councilmember Watson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Singh.
Here.
Mayor Brookover.
Here. Item 1.2, approval of the agenda. Do we have any motions?
Yeah, I have a motion. Actually, I'd like to add, I move approval of the agenda with one addition to the consent agenda, and that's to appoint John Lindstrom to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission for a term, unexpired term ending December 31st, 2025.
Okay, motion by Meadows to amend the agenda to add an item 4.2. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Watson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the motion passes unanimously. Item 1.3, minutes, approval of the minutes for regular council meeting of May 14th, 2024. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Move approval.
Is a tie going to the runner?
I support.
Okay. Moved by Altman, support by Meadows to approve the minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Item 2.1, all written communications are received by council are posted on the online agenda packet. Item 2.2, communications from the audience. Deputy Chief Pride.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. My name is Deputy Chief Chad Pride. I'm here to introduce to you one of our new officers. This is Officer Jack Saylor. He was sworn in on Monday, April 6th, 2024. Officer Saylor attended the 113th Mid-Michigan Police Academy at Lansing Community College. While he went to that academy, he received a award for his driving. As you know, in police work, we drive cars a lot. My hope is through this driving award that he received and this training he received, we won't have any accidents in our patrol cars. Just a little bit about Jack. He attended Old Dominican University where he studied pre-law. He then transferred to Michigan State University to study criminal justice. At both universities, Ben competed for their respective football teams. While at Michigan State University, Ben received an academic All-Big Ten award in 2020. This is no easy feat. And if any of you are coming into work at 6 o'clock in the morning and you see students on mopeds or on bikes heading towards campus, usually those are student athletes. I commend Ben for receiving that award. Ben has a bachelor's degree. I keep on saying Ben because Benjamin's his real name, but he goes by Jack. Jack has a bachelor's degree of arts with a minor in criminal justice from Michigan State University, graduating in May of 2023. One of our other officers who was sworn in the same day with Jack is Wyatt Keith. Unfortunately, he was unable to make it due to a family illness. But just to give a brief background on Wyatt Keith, he's from Michigan Center. He attended Michigan Center High School. He did serve our country honorably as a United States Marine from July of 2017 to 2021. Wyatt attended Lansing Community College and received his bachelor's degree of arts with a minor in criminal justice from Michigan State University, graduating in May of 2023. He also attended the 113th Mid-Michigan Police Academy with Jack. I am grateful to have both of these young men in our police department. From what I've seen and speaking with them in their interviews, they are true men of professionalism and integrity. So I'm honored to introduce both of them to you guys tonight. If you have any questions for myself or for Officer Saylor, I'd appreciate those. So thank you.
Thanks for coming tonight, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Mr. Rose?
Good evening. As many of you know, I've been collecting signatures with over 40 other people for our charter amendment. The purpose of this amendment is to make it so you can live in your own home with whomever you choose as long as they do not pay rent. Over and over again, people are telling me they support our proposal after they read the first provision. Let me read it now. The city shall not restrict in any way relationships of persons living together as a household or residing in the home, or interfere with the rights of owners to live with persons of their choice, as long as such persons are not rent-paying tenants. What this means is that the city cannot fine you for having your best friend and his wife stay over 30 days in a row in your extra bedroom after they lose their house or their job. They currently can be fined thousands of dollars. Our proposal lets you have another friend stay with her child as a long-term guest over 30 days in your home to escape domestic abuse. This would be illegal without a rental license under the code unless they fit within a narrow exception, which would not likely apply. Voters should decide who live with them, not politicians. There is unnecessary confusion about our language. Mark Meadows and Eric Altman have been falsely claiming our proposal will unravel the city's rental regulations. They claim this by misstating our language. They wrote in City Pulse that our amendment says, and I quote, "The city shall not restrict in any way relationships of persons living together as a household or residing in a home, ... This partial quote with the ... leaves off the most important part of our proposal, that we protect relationships, not rent-paying tenants. Read what our proposal says. Our amendment clearly does not take away the city's ability and authority to require rent-paying tenants to obtain a rental license. It does not change overlay districts at all. It continues the city ban on converting family homes to group student rental houses in Ordinance 900. Let me repeat, our proposal in every respect only relates to persons who do not pay rent. East Lansing residents want to protect their right to invite unrelated guests to live in their home for 6 months or a year. Our proposal protects that basic freedom to choose who lives with you. Our proposal then expands the rental housing exceptions, which currently do allow certain unrelated people to live in your home. However, those exceptions are narrow, arbitrary, and they privilege the wealthy. I want to speak about one exception, referred to in the code as a domestic servant. If your family needs someone to help with housekeeping or chores, you are allowed to have a domestic servant or a house helper. We heard this many times from our city council member, Mr. Altman, who said you can have a housekeeper live in. What the code actually says about this limited exception is as follows, and I'm quoting: domestic servants, occupancy by a domestic servant with the owner or owner's family, if the domestic servant is employed full-time as a domestic servant for the owner and owner's family, and the owner or owner's family is paying Social Security taxes for the domestic servant's employment as a domestic servant. Let's think about what that means. You have to pay a person a minimum of 30 hours a week? 30 hours times $20, $600 a week? Most people can't afford to pay 30 hours on a housekeeper. Wealthy people can afford that, but not the rest of us. A senior aging in place in East Lansing cannot have a paid part-time housekeeper. They need to remain in their home because that does not conform to the full-time rental exception. If they want someone for 10 hours or 20 hours, and that means the difference between staying in their home and being forced to leave, the city is telling you it's not legal and they can face thousands of dollars in fines. Our proposal would fix this arbitrary, classist, and economically unjust rental license law and let people choose who they want to live in their home
30 seconds
as
remaining.
long as they do not pay rent. Thank you.
Thank you for your perspective, Mr. Rose. Ms. Rose.
My name's Sherry Rose, and I'm going to speak today to what brought me to speak about this, because as a person who's not an attorney, I want to say that the current rules about who can stay in your home are confusing, complex, and convoluted, and probably take many more than the PhD and law degree that we have in our home to understand. And I'd like them to be clear and help protect civil rights of people so they can choose who lives in their home with them and not have to read so many different chapters and places in this code that it's very confusing. So I want to tell a story of how I came to understand how confusing this is. So when we first found out about the overlay coming into our neighborhood, I was told that we would need a rental license if my daughter had a friend stay with us in our home for the summer for over 30 days and then another 30 days, 60-day total. So the friend would be in our house from May through August. I was told you need a rental license for that, so we applied for a rental license, but then when you have an overlay in your neighborhood, you can't get a rental license anymore, so we didn't get a rental license. Then I was told, it's okay, you can say it's a domestic unit. That's like a family with that friend in the house. And I said, wait a minute, a domestic unit is a person whose association is temporary or seasonal in nature. I mean, is not. It cannot be someone who is temporary or seasonal in nature for a limited duration. So they said, oh, you're right, it's not a domestic unit, you can't have that person. So then this weekend, I read the news, WKAR article where Mark said, they can have any guests they want. They can stay there as long as they want to, as long as they're not paying rent. So I don't know what they're talking about. And I spoke with Mark today, and he confirmed that that's the actual rules of East Lansing. And I thought, why have I been waiting 9 months to get someone to put in writing for me that I can have my daughter's friend in the house with us for the summer for more than 60 days? And he said, yes, that's the rule. So I went and I looked at what is the rule about guests in your home. And it says a guest is any person who occupies a room for living or sleeping purposes without consideration and for no longer than 30 consecutive days, no more than 60 days in a year, except that for dwellings not required to be licensed pursuant to Chapter 10, which is the list of exceptions that Mr. Altman has referred to. Guest means a person who occupies a room for living or sleeping purposes in a dwelling unit with the owner or owner's family residing therein without consideration. So today, Annette Irwin also repeated to me that I could have a guest in my house for however long I wanted to, as long as they're not paying rent, the same thing that Mark said. And I said, but that doesn't make sense to me because it says here that a rental unit is any dwelling occupied or offered for occupancy by any person other than the owner, owner's family, or guest as defined in this article. So then I had to go and find buried where that definition was of guest, which said 60 days total, 30 and then 60 altogether. So I read all of this, and I said to Annette today, so who does this guest provision apply to? I'm unclear. This is very unclear. And she said it only applies to rental units. So if you have a rental unit, the rental unit can only have a guest in the rental unit for 30 days and then another 30 days. I said, so why haven't I been told that until now? Could you please put that in writing
30 seconds remaining.
so we can clarify all this? I said, perhaps you can have the lawyer put that in writing. And I said the same thing to Mark. He said, I'm not going to do that. But it would be wonderful if we could hear that everybody in East Lansing could have guests. And Mark happened to write, they can stay there as long as they want to, which is plural. And so that means more than one, and Annette said one, so again, we have lack of clarity and confusion. So we really need to clear this up, and that's what we hope to do.
Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Soren Anderson.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk tonight. My name is Soren Anderson. I'm working with this group to collect signatures to propose an amendment to the city charter that would clarify that owners can live with who they want in their home as long as they're not rent-paying tenants. I have a story. I have a close friend who last summer, she was living in East Lansing. I'm sorry, not East Lansing, Lansing. And there was an act of violence close to her house, and these people actually threatened her. She did not feel safe living in the place she was. So she had some friends that lived here in East Lansing, an older couple, just living the two of them in a very large home, 3 or 4 bedrooms, multiple extra bedrooms. And so she, both because of these safety reasons, and also she knew she was going to need to have a down payment saved up to buy another home, her next spot, lived with them rent-free for I think about 8 months. So this was both for safety reasons and economic reasons in order to get back on her feet to where she could find safer housing. My reading of the East Lansing Code is that this is actually not legal, that this situation was not legal. Just kind of repeating some of what Sherry said, it's very clear, occupancy of any dwelling by any person other than the owner of record shall be presumed to require a rental license. A rental unit is any dwelling occupied for occupancy by any person other than the owner's family, or a guest. You go to the definition of guest. A guest is someone that's living in this home for less than 30 days at a time, or 60 days total in a year. There are some exceptions. A rental license is not required for family occupancy, and then there's a separate definition for what constitutes a family, and then a whole host of other kind of temporary things like house sitting, or after a home sale, or an exchange student, or a visiting clergy, and so on. The domestic servant Patrick referred to. So a set of exceptions. And then if you look to the definition of a family, it's very clear. A family is persons. A family is persons classified. Constituting a family shall be limited to husband, wife, son, daughter, father, mother, brother, sister, grandfather, grandmother, grandson, granddaughter, aunt, uncle, stepchildren, and legally adopted children. Close friend that needs a place to stay for a few months to get back on their feet is not included in that definition. There's a broad definition for a domestic unit. It's broad in the sense that as long as it's kind of a family-like unit, it can include a large number of people, not necessarily blood relatives. But it's very clear, a collective number of individuals living together whose relationship is of a regular and permanent nature, not someone that needs a place to live because they're unsafe for 3 or 4 months. Has a domestic character or demonstrable recognizable bond. I mean, these were close friends. They're not a family. They're not providing basic material needs for their other. It's just like, hey, I need a place to live for a few months until I can save up enough money to buy a safe home. Not included. And it's very explicit. It does not include a group whose sharing of a house is not to function as a family, but merely for convenience and economics. So I don't think this was convenient for her. It was a safety issue. She was physically threatened by some people, did not feel safe in her own home. But it was, so it was not convenient, but it was just partly to save money. It was partly for economics. So our proposed amendment would address this issue by clarifying that if I'm living in my own home, I should be able to have my sister, if she wants to move to Michigan and needs a place to live for 6 months, she should be able to stay with me. That's included. But her partner is not included. Like, if I have a house to myself, I should be able to have my sister and her partner live with me without worrying that I could get fined for that kind of thing. So this proposed amendment, which Patrick read, would clarify that. And I think I've talked to dozens of people trying to collect signatures. People are actually quite shocked when they learn, when I just read to them what is included in the city charter. They're shocked, angry, they're upset. They have used words like disgusting in reference to that type of thing. So I think we really need to fix this. So please consider supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Hewitt or Harnett? Hewitt, thank you.
Hello, everybody. During the last City Council meeting, I had a brief discussion with Councilmember Altman about his responses to the city's DI initiatives brought forward on multiple occasions by Director Hardy. I decided to speak in public today with the hope that this can be the start of something positive. I'm asking Councilmember Altman to be a better public servant, to be less defensive, and be more empathetic. To be open to learning about people who belong to demographics that are different from his own, and to be willing to put in the time to understand their values, fears, and aspirations. We all have our biases and blind spots, but recognizing and acknowledging them is an important step. Lastly, I'd like to thank Director Hardy and Councilmember Watson for their commitment to inclusivity, not just to people like me, but to everyone who visits and calls East Lansing home. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Ms. Rachel, I finally got it right.
Good evening. I'm a volunteer with the proposed Housing Charter Amendment Committee, and I thank you for launching a Charter Revision Committee. As we gather signatures, I point our signers to the City Post columns written by City Council members. I agree that the city has a list of family members and a domestic unit clause. I explain that the city has exceptions that do not require rental licenses, but the fine print poses concerns. Take, for example, the exception of medically prescribed care. Our city code defines that term. Quote, "A person provides medically prescribed care as described in this code when they devote at least 20 scheduled hours per week to the medical care of a person pursuant to a valid prescription." Now, that definition was added, I believe, in March of 2014, and not by the members of this council. Fortunately, single homeowners in East Lansing can have a roommate and they can charge rent. But the couple, married or not, heterosexual or not, cannot have a friend stay for more than 30 days at a time, or 60 days in a year, at least according to the regulations. And that's even if one of the couple have suffered a stroke, dementia, or a broken hip. A couple's child can stay, but not their unmarried partner. Nationwide, 75% of seniors want to age in place at home, reports the AARP. U.S. Health and Human Services suggests that more than 2/3 of senior home care is informal and unpaid, provided by family and friends. Seniors who understand and read this definition quickly sign our petition, and some tell humiliating stories of being cited. I had a very nice conversation with a council member on Monday who kindly pointed out that domestic unit covers the informal caregiving I'm talking about. And WKAR quoted another council member as saying they can have any guests they want, they can stay there as long as they want, as long as they're not paying rent. So this is great news for me. I look forward to the city attorney and the full council issuing guidance. But why does the city need definitions of medically prescribed caregivers, 20 hours per week, or live-in housekeepers, paid for full-time each week? Why do homeowners share stories of citations and visits by city inspectors? Seniors can easily imagine a future where limits are a problem. City staff should not be put on the spot, the difficult spot, of answering questions with endless scenarios. Senior citizens in this town express two desires. We want peaceful neighborhoods with considerate neighbors. We also want the freedom to age in place and rely on friends if necessary for informal care. And I'm optimistic that East Lansing can provide both. At least 3 times, neighbors have approached me and said, You can have guests for more than 30 days. You're okay. They're not going to fine you. That is troubling for me because I don't want to break the law. And our state senator agreed with me in a recent conversation on Election Day. He said, no, you should not have to break the law. Our intention is not to increase rentals or overload homes. The city and state have good occupancy rules. As retired Ingham Court Judge James Giddings and others wrote in the City Pulse, they wrote, the ballot proposal will not change much in East Lansing's current zoning law. It is one small step toward a more progressive and inclusive city. This proposal recognizes the rights of property owners to have house guests of their choice in their homes without being asked to pay thousands in fines to an intrusive city government. Aging in place is a national trend. Caregiving is a major concern for seniors who could face this emergency at any moment. The Charter Revision Committee has yet to be appointed, and the changes could take months. So respectfully, I must
30 seconds remaining.
I must continue collecting signatures until the regulations are changed. Our website is eastlansingcac.com. Please reach out if you have questions, and look for me if you want to sign a petition. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Okay, seeing nobody else in the audience, do we have anybody in the queue?
There are no callers in the queue.
Okay. Sure. You want to give your name for the record, please, and your address?
Hello, my name is Mike French, and I live at 321 Clarendon. Thank you, City Council, for an opportunity to speak tonight. I wanted to briefly mention why I support the proposed charter amendment being circulated by the East Lansing Charter Amendment Committee and has been in the news lately. The continued tightening of restrictions around properties in the City of East Lansing, particularly in my neighborhood of Glencairn, is driving me to support this initiative. This charter amendment will ensure that homeowners can use their homes in traditional ways without concern for potential violations and accompanying fines. Inviting people into your home is to invite them into your lives, whether that's for a cup of coffee, a weekend getaway, or for a period of months while they work through some hardship, and all seem acceptable in traditional uses of homes to me. I recognize that the ordinances call for carve-outs and other exceptions or special dispensations, many short-term in nature, but in my opinion, meeting some test with clear and convincing evidence is not something I should have to worry about. I have an open door policy among my friends and family, as I'm sure many of my fellow residents also do, and that policy doesn't come with strings attached. I've come to believe that in order for the city to continue to issue rental licenses, they will have to continue to restrict what single-family homeowners can do inside their homes, and those cascading restrictions, I believe, are unsustainable. Because at some point, those of us who own homes are going to stop and say, wait a second, couldn't I use my home in this way or that just last year? Only to come to the realization that another layer of zoning ordinance has been bounded to our properties. If the goal is to preserve and promote single-family home ownership in this community, then we should start with enshrining in our charter that owning and living in a home comes with few strings attached. Rather than carefully crafting ordinances because the rights of those who hold rental licenses seem to somehow outshine and eclipse those of folks who actually live in the homes they own. In the course of my support for this charter amendment, I've spoken with many of my fellow residents. One thing that rings clear among those who've asked follow-up questions is how will this impact the student rental dynamic? This amendment is about what homeowners can do with their homes, stating, quote, "The city shall not restrict in any way relationships of persons living together as a household or residing in the home, or interfere with the rights of owners to live with persons of their choice, as long as such persons are not rent-paying tenants," end quote. This language preserves the city's capacity to enforce rental licensing and continue overlays, while also making a clear statement in its charter that the rights of permanent, principal residents owning, real property tax and income tax paying homeowners and their families are among the highest of the city's priorities. I'm optimistic about the future of the City of East Lansing, and I believe this is a good start. Thank you.
Thanks for your input. Okay. If there's nobody else that wants to address the council, I'd like to move on. Communications from the mayor and council members. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have anything?
Yes.
Ms. Watson, do you have anything?
yeah.
Go ahead, please.
I've got several different things that I wanted to bring up today during my public comment. One of them is, and I normally don't comment on this unless I just didn't really feel comfortable about how I was quoted by a journalist. So I believe in speaking to our journalists. I believe in speaking to really anybody that wants to meet, have a conversation, send an email. And I had a conversation that was posted in Lansing State Journal with a reporter that was asking questions about Chief Johnson being on leave. And I was concerned because one of the paragraphs just came off like I kind of like nonchalantly was speaking to internal things that were going on within the police department. But really, what I was trying to relay to the reporter was everything within our community appears to be business as usual. Like I'm not hearing or getting reports back that things are in chaos, even though we do have an important person that is on leave right now. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to say that because I don't want the police department to think that I'm trying to speak for them. And again, really my message was that we're still doing okay. And we've got backup plans to backup plans when someone is not in their place. The next thing I wanted to mention is thank you to the Human Rights Commission for just continuing to try to have conversations with our council on a resolution for a ceasefire. And I also want to recognize there was an encampment that took place on Michigan State campus a couple of weekends ago because they would like to see a divestment in the funds that go to Israel. Sometimes, again, we think because we're far removed from the area that it doesn't come back to us, but there are so many stories and so many different ways that this does come back to us and why the ceasefires are important. But again, I wanted to thank the Human Rights Commission. One of the final things I've seen them do is write a letter to all of council, and they've just remained to their point and also politely asking for a conversation. And so similarly, our Housing Commission, I'm council liaison for the Housing Commission as well. The chair and vice chair and Annette Urin reached out to me because the Housing Commission is interested in reaching out to council to get our support for them to take deeper dives into the short-term rentals. And so hopefully you all got that. I think it's been sent. But again, my advice to them when they wanted to do this was encouraging them to please reach out to all of council. Sometimes a message from me doesn't exactly hit the same way. And speaking of short-term rentals, because it came to mind today and something that I mentioned to our Housing Commission, we like to think that people in Airbnbs are typically partying, but I have and know people who have heard of people who are survivors that find a safe place in Airbnbs. And if you think about how people get access to Airbnbs and the privacy that includes, like it makes sense that it's not just, again, your Airbnbs that are just servicing people that are coming here to party. So the next thing I wanted to mention is about the charter reviews and our charter commission. Who is living with who has historically been embedded in systems of oppression. So when you think about why these rules are even in place, and why people care so doggone much about who's walking into whose home, I think it comes from anti-Semitism, it comes from homophobia, heterosexism, and it comes from racism, and people having problems with who they're seeing and being concerned. And speaking of, the traditional word was used by the person in support, and it made me think we're not just talking, when we talk about inclusion, it's not just traditional, it's non-traditional. People aren't getting married that much these days in America. People aren't having kids that much. And the system's changing, and the people who made many of these rules that we're trying so hard to follow, again, it's a bit embedded in oppression. And so I feel like an anarchist to say, but I'm just looking forward to these further conversations, to hearing from the Charter Review Commission, to hearing from I wrote it down, eastlansingcac.com. I will be checking you all out as well, so that we can align with 2024 and no longer be misaligned with historically what was going on for people. So thank you.
Okay. Mr. Meadows?
A couple of things. Number one, yeah, I did speak in plural when I was being interviewed, but I did not mean it to be plural. I don't know why I said it that way, but it's clear to me from the definition of guest that it seems to be speaking in the singular. In other words, you have a guest. So in that sense, I'm comfortable with my interpretation of the guest definition, which I think clearly states that if you don't have to be licensed, then you can have a guest and they can stay as long as they want. The first part of that definition only applies to a rental. So, but I do want to address just a couple of things that were also said at the microphone. One, I'm perfectly comfortable with the response that Councilmember Altman and myself sent in to the only, I guess, newspaper that we're seeing other than East Lansing Info. And that op-ed, I think, accurately defined and looked at the first paragraph of the proposed ballot changes. I read that a little differently than I think Mr. and Mrs. Rose do, but I look at it in the light of my own experience as an assistant attorney general who had to read and interpret statutes on a daily basis. In that definition, there are two phrases, and they stand alone because they are divided by the word or instead of and. And I think that is the appropriate interpretation of it. And the first section of that particular paragraph has unexpected consequences, I think. I believe it when Mr. and Mrs. Rose say that their intention was not to undermine Ordinance 900 and the overlay zones, but it does exactly that. Because if the city cannot regulate who lives in a particular house, we don't have any authority to limit the number of people who might be in that house, and we don't have the authority to limit the unrelated individuals who might live in that house. So that's just one of the items that I think that are problems with this particular proposal, and I know that we'll take a look at that when the signatures are secured and turned into the clerk for verification. I would like to indicate that I think most of the things that are in that particular proposal are addressed in a manner that would indicate to me, and I think I've mentioned this to Mrs. Rose today, that they seem like ordinance changes. Why are they going into a charter? And I think that there is ample opportunity for us to take a look at it. I want to take a look at it. I want to go line by line through our rental housing code. It's been 30 years, just like our charter, and it's time to take a look at it. And when I look at some of the things that have been brought up by individuals who have talked about it, I do respond and say, why do we have that now, this way? I think some of the language relating to Social Security, for instance, that was brought up in one of the comments here, maybe because federal law requires that to happen when you're paying somebody, for services in your home. And I think there were other IRS related issues that may have encouraged the type of language that we have in the code right now, and maybe don't even apply any longer. So I'm happy to take a look at it and look at ordinance changes, but I don't think we need this in the charter. And since we do have a charter commission, all of these items can be on the table for us to take a look at. So anyway, those are my comments with regard to this at this point in time. Anyway, I'm happy to also meet with the people who are proposing this to give my own feelings on it. These are my opinions. And, I think they're right most of the time, but maybe Mr. Rose can correct me at some point.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try to be brief. So just to start out, I stand by my position that our rental regulations and our housing code are not just effective, but also progressive and forward-thinking. I stand behind that. And they were developed to preserve owner occupancy in our neighborhoods, especially close to campus. And they've worked at doing that. And they've imposed a minimal burden on people's lives when you get down to what people really do with their homes. I think some of the example scenarios that people have raised make me think that there may be a role for an extraordinary circumstances provision in the code. People have raised circumstances that are probably quite rare, but that are adjacent to the sorts of exceptions and domestic unit considerations that are already in the code. And if people are concerned that their situation doesn't fall under one of those exceptions or one of those existing provisions, then there might be a place for some sort of extraordinary circumstances provision that allows people to gain approval for circumstances that are adjacent to the ones that are already in there. I think that's an idea worth taking a look at. Again, that, as Councilmember Meadows indicated, that's an ordinance change. It's not a charter change. I thought that I had read the code pretty carefully. I thought I was a student of our housing and rental regulations after the past 2 months, but then I learned about the full definition of a guest this afternoon, which includes situations if you don't have a need for a rental license in your house, and a guest can stay for as long as they want. So I don't know where this 30-day and 60-day thing comes from. I think if we can quote code snippets at each other till we're blue in the face. I think if you tell somebody part of the story, yeah, they're going to be shocked because it's not the full story and it doesn't communicate how the code really works. Which brings me to a point that I've made before, which is that this is a complex code. That doesn't mean it's not effective, okay, but it is complex and it's hard to find stuff. And that poses problems because people shouldn't have to chase around all these different sections in the code to decide for themselves how they're allowed to use their home. And so what we have, because of this complexity, is we have an information vacuum effectively, and people are filling it with some information that's maybe not quite the whole story, and that's causing some concern in the community. I can sit here and read the code, and I've done this before. I can do that till I'm blue in the face, but that's not enough. Okay, and in any case, I don't speak for the city, right? I can't give the definitive opinion. So the city needs to speak for the city. I think we're at that point. The need is here. We have a complex code. The community deserves accessible and authoritative guidance, as one of our speakers said very clearly, about how they can use their homes. And the need is here, and I think there's interest on the part of, I hope, the council and others in city administration to try to make that happen. It's, the ship of state is slow to turn, but we're working on it. Thank you.
Okay, I have nothing to add tonight. City manager report.
I have a couple items. First, I want to extend my appreciation to the Parks, Recreation, and Arts Department, DBW, Heather Mahano, Tim Lane, and all those who helped put on the East Lansing Art Festival this past weekend and worked to make it a successful event. Secondly, applications for the Parks, Recreation, and Arts Department Roundup scholarships are now open These scholarships are provided to financially assist youth and adults from low-income families in the community who wish to participate in activities offered by the Parks, Recreation, and Arts Department. They can include arts classes, fitness classes, youth sports program registration, All of Us Express Children's Theater fees, and more. Third, tomorrow's at 11 a.m., there will be a Memorial Day wreath-laying ceremony at the Hannah Community Center Medal of Honor Memorial and Veterans Monument. City of East Lansing and Lansing-based Charlie Company 1st Battalion, 24th Marines will lay the wreath. Additionally, the city's Department of Public Works Director and Michigan National Guard Brigadier General Scott E. House will give remarks. This event is open to the public. Finally, city offices and facilities will be closed on Monday, May 27th in observance of Memorial Day. This includes City Hall, 54B District Court, DPW, Hannah Community Center, East Lansing Prime Time, and East Lansing Public Library. Thank you.
Okay, City Attorney report?
I have nothing to report.
Okay, moving on, we have a special presentation tonight from Barbara Davidson, the Director of Ingham County 911, to present to us on the countywide transition to Rave Alert. I don't know if you have a staff member accompanying you tonight, but it's okay with us if you don't, so please go ahead.
I think she's going to put up a presentation for me.
Great.
But I'll start by saying good evening. My name is Barb Davidson. I'm the Director of Ingham County 911. Thank you for allowing me to take the time to come to speak to you tonight. My intention here is to speak with you about the countywide transition from Everbridge and Nixle to Rave. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why the decision was made, give you an overview of the platform, and then ask for your help. So I'd like to start by just talking through a little bit of why the decision was made. Very unfortunately, in February of '23, we learned some lessons. And a couple of the lessons that we learned was that our mass notification system that we were using at the time was difficult. And by difficult, I mean we needed more people that could use it quickly and efficiently, because we had a lot of people that were very scared and needed some direction, and we needed a notification system that we could do that with very effectively. It brought to highlight that we needed to start looking. However, we had already started looking, because in conversations the county had with its contract with Everbridge was coming to an end, and they were raising the price. And we weren't seeing any kind of additional services. So we had already started shopping, so to speak. A couple of the other lessons that we learned during February of 2023 was we needed a platform that would very robustly engage with our computer-aided dispatch. It's called CAD. In high complex situations, we wanted something where those two integrations could help our responders. That's how we arrived at Rave. And that is the products that we purchased. So I'll talk a little bit about the platform itself and how each one of these products works. So the platform itself is called Rave. So if that's the overview. The products we purchased were called Rave Alert, which is that mass notification that we've been talking about, Mobile Reach, which I will explain briefly, and then Rave Link, which is that component that integrates with our computer-aided dispatch in a way to be able to assist our public safety partners. So Rave is the platform. Rave Alert is the mass notification. It is the leading mass notification system in the United States currently. Very reliable, can send messages to multiple of communication methods, which was very important to us. We want to make sure that we continue to engage the public in the communication methods that they are comfortable with. If that means social media, voice, text, phone calls, digital signage, CAPS, desktop, and then IoT, Internet of Things devices, we want to be able to continue to have the ability to do that. So we use Rave Alert. That was how we got there. Can you advance the slide, please? The big thing for us next is how do we build this audience? Because it doesn't go without my notice that we are asking the citizens of Ingham County, the City of East Lansing, to make a change, which is going to require them to move from the Nixle platform to Smart 911. Rave Alert is one product, Smart 911 is another. It's free to the citizens of, anybody can sign up for free. And what it is that's how we build that audience. That's how the citizens of East Lansing and Ingham County can sign up, provide us with information that they would like. It is completely to their discretion, and then opt in to some of these alerting group messages that we've developed. For example, East Lansing traffic, Ingham County traffic, East Lansing community events, weather statements, those kind of things. Those are some opt-in stuff. Do you need to know what East Lansing traffic conditions are, or that there's an accident and to avoid an area? It's convenient, yes, but you don't have to do that. It's certainly something you can decide whether or not you would like to engage us in. And we want to be able to have them have that option. The citizens should be able to make the decision on how robustly we engage with them. Smart 911. Could you advance the slide again? Sorry. I'm not used to having somebody do it for me, so sorry. It's okay. So it's a simple way for people to prepare, because that's the other part of this always. I don't want anybody to ever feel like they have to prepare for an emergency at the time of the emergency. We talk about preparedness. We talk about it a lot with citizens when we are talking in community events. Preparedness. How do we do that in 911? Smart 911 is a great way for us to do that, to encourage preparedness of our citizens. You can go in and give us as much or as little key information about you as you would like. I'll give you an example. I have a Smart 911 profile at my home. I use it because my daughter has asthma. When I call 911 from my cell phone through this Smart 911 profile, it displays in the 911 center. And the 911 dispatchers are able to have that information at their fingertips and can provide that information to the responders who are responding to your home. I also provide things like, my dog is named Hank and he's kind of a pest, and just ignore him and go about your business. Would you like me to know the access code into your home? You can do that. One of the things that I like also, my mom is 80 years old. Smart 911 offers me an option to build that profile for her. She's not completely, she can send text messages and stuff, but she's not great with technology. She doesn't like it. Part of what I like about it is not only can I do it for her, but Smart 911 gives us a nudge every 6 months, because for us, this information is only good as current it is. So every 6 months, it gives us a little nudge to go look at it and make sure that it's still current. Does this still make sense? My daughter does not live with me anymore. She goes to college, so we built her own Smart 911 profile that says that she has asthma. The alerts then can also be opted into. That's the other part of Smart 911. When you go into it and you can take a look, not only can you opt into all of Ingham counties, but this is a proximity thing. So Eaton County very robustly uses Rave Alert as well, and you can opt into their opt-in messages if you would like as well. And then it's a secure profile with nationwide availability. So Smart 911 travels with my mom. The county that she goes to in the wintertime when it's cold and she hates it also has Smart 911. So when she's there and uses 911, the dispatch center in that county also sees her Smart 911 profile. It gives me a little peace of mind when she's down there by herself. Could you advance the slide, please? Thank you so much. So this is what it looks like. So on the left is what it looks like when you build the profile in Smart 911. Again, as much or as little as you would like to provide is fine. Your first and last name and an email address is all you have to be able to do this. On the right is what we see in the 911 center. This is a way for us to be able to explain this information to the first responders for somebody who maybe can't speak freely or isn't able to. One of the things we also like very much about Smart 911 is one of the other mandatory decisions that you have to make is you have to decide which language you would like us to communicate with you in. You choose. So if I make a message and you decide that that you choose to speak Spanish is the primary language you would like us to engage you in, the message that you will receive will be in Spanish. The messages I receive back will be in English. Could you advance the slide, please? Thank you so much. The other part of this that we think is really important, who doesn't have a cell phone right now? It's something that my daughter probably got a little too young, but we are using this also to start talking about children and starting to engage them in a way where we can get some information about them as well. We'd love for people to start making this part of the school safety checklist and preparedness when they send their kids to school. Would you advance it again, please? Thank you so much. So the other free option, which it's Rave Alert, that's my mass notification platform I'm going to use to engage the public. Smart 911 is the public's ability to log in, opt in, and give us information. Rave Facility, they just did a little rebrand. They call it Motorola Facility now. It's a free service as well. This is the Smart 911 for businesses. If you have a business and you want to share information with us so that we can help responders respond more quickly to a problem, whether it be emergency contacts, alarm information, shut-offs, where your gas shut-off, water shut-off is, wherever that may be. That's all information that can be loaded in there as well. Would you advance that, please? And one more time. So I talked a little bit about Alert. We talked about Smart 911. We've talked about the facility feature that we have. The last part of what we bought, second to last, is called Rave Link. So this is that integration between our computer-aided dispatch, which is the computer program that my dispatchers use every single day. A call from 911 comes in, they question the caller, and that information goes into the computer-aided dispatch. Depending on what and where it is, then that information goes to one of the dispatchers who uses it to dispatch responders as appropriate. We want that to be linked and drive and help the responders on the other end. I'll give you an example. With this, we would have the capability as these large events are unfolding, say it's a structure fire, there's a building that's on fire. Chief Carson can set in place a task list. We get a structure fire in the City of East Lansing. It will drive a link to a predetermined telephone number, presumably either her own or a battalion chief that's responding, with a list of tasks. Do this, notify the chief, and these are one-button pushes that will link and then determine what is going to happen next. We did find that in that incident in February, it was very chaotic. It was handled extremely well by the responders, but we needed a little help to keep things organized. It's a way to just remember, don't forget this thing, don't forget that thing. And then it tracks on a report so that we know who was assigned and when it was accomplished. It's like having a little assistant to put in their pocket. The other part of this that we bought outside of Rave Link, which we think will be very important, is a product called Mobile Reach. I didn't put a slide up for it. It's okay. I don't know how familiar you are with iPause, so when you get those alerts on your phones, everybody gets them. It's all based on geography. So if something really bad happens and we need to tell folks and we use that, if you are in that defined space, you get that message. We bought a product called Mobile Reach because if you reside here in East Lansing but don't happen to be in East Lansing at the time of the incident, we still want you to know about the emergency that's occurring in East Lansing because we don't necessarily want you to come home, depending on what it was. That was another lesson that we learned back in February. We needed folks to be able to know what to do, whether you were home or not. So the help that I would be asking for would be asking for you to promote these products. They're free to the citizens. We would be happy to, I would be happy to come and speak again to any community, neighborhood groups, whatever you have. But we're looking for support also from the council. That's the ask. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Davidson tonight? Please go ahead.
What's the transition timeline?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, so our site is open right now for people to be able to sign up for Smart 911, take a look, decide, make decisions if they want to opt in. We will fully transition June 1,
Oh, like in,
like in 2 weeks.
okay. And you may have covered this when you talked
That's okay.
about the last piece of the mobile notification, but you know, I think immediately to MSU students. So even if they haven't created a profile, you can still send a warning message if necessary. to
We
their
can,
mobile
and
phone.
MSU has a very robust alerting system that they use as well.
Okay.
They have one internally that they use for sure.
And then I'm assuming if you build your profile, including family members, like unfortunately I saw a pretty nasty accident today with a cyclist, and if their phone is out of commission and you're trying to figure out who this person may belong to, or family relatives, is there a way through?
If they called 911 from the phone, if it was actually still functional and you called 911, it would display. If it's not, unfortunately, the police would have to be involved, and they do have a few ways that
Tools,
they can, that they can figure
I
it
could
out.
tell you a story about when I got hit by a car and what it took to find my parents, but
Oh,
that's
no.
another time, not for the podium.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
I've got some questions.
Ms. Watson?
So no more Nixle.
No more
June
Nixle.
1st.
June 1st.
Are you guys going to push out another message about it? I got the one about the change.
We put out social media and a press release on Monday. We will be putting out information every single day until, including, we will be alerting people on Everbridge about the transition to Rave. And I am certain that the plan is to alert on Nixle of the transition to Rave, so that the first hearing about this transition isn't from a platform that they don't recognize, that it's coming from this trusted source that they've seen before, that this isn't just us making up something. This is really what's going to happen.
So we could look at your social media and repost
Yes.
what you're
Yes.
posted. Okay. So Clinton County isn't involved in this.
They utilize Smart 911.
Oh, they do already.
They
Okay.
do.
All right, good.
They don't use it as robustly as Eaton County and Ingham County will, but they certainly do have it.
Okay. And I didn't understand because you were saying like if there's a problem, you wouldn't be able to know the person by their phone, and the connection to children knowing about this service. So I didn't understand that. I thought of it as like, does that mean if the child's lost or involved in an accident and has a phone on them, but that's not what it means, so.
The way that the profile is set up, if you give information and that phone number is tied to the profile, when it presents, it will present your household, whether it is you or your child.
All right. And so you have to sign up, right? So I clicked on it and then I, got out of it because it was asking for me to create a profile. But you have to create a profile.
You do.
Okay.
You do not have to share any of that information, nothing.
Okay.
You can, a name and an email, so that you have a registration email. That's all it has to be.
And does the app track the person?
The app,
Yeah, you know how apps.
Smart 911 app, does it track the person? No.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
All right. Cool. I think it's really great that you guys are offering it in different languages. I don't know if Nixle did that or not, but that's great. We have, a lot of people that speak different languages and like to use other primary languages. So, great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Director Davidson.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
coming tonight. Okay, consent agenda, Mr. City Manager.
You have two items on tonight's consent agenda. 4.1 is consideration of the 2025, 2030 through 2030 Capital Improvements Program. And then from tonight's amendment is to approve the following appointment or reappointments to boards or commission with John Lindstrom to the Parks and Recreational Advisory Commission for unexpired term ending December 21st, 2025.
Do we have a motion?
Was that the 21st or the 31st?
I took it from your email, so it's whatever, if it's the 31st.
It's the 31st is
Okay,
what I said.
sorry,
So,
thank you.
okay.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Consent agenda is moved by Meadows. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second from Singh. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed unanimously. We now move to the business agenda. Item 5.1, consideration of the fiscal year 2025 budget, tax rate, and fee schedule resolution. Mr. City Manager.
So Audrey Kincaid, who is the Deputy Finance Director, is going to walk through the resolution you're being asked to adopt tonight and any amendments you may make to that resolution.
All right, we're at the finish line, guys. So the resolution you have tonight is the same one that was presented at the public hearing last week with the two amendments or adjustments that we'd already discussed, the legal fees and additional debt. We discussed a couple of potential amendments that we've included language for tonight, but they are not currently in the resolution. And then we have a third add-on amendment that we're asking to move to include in the budget. We were notified of a need to make a change to a fee that we can't actually charge, so we'd like to remove that from the fee schedule.
Okay, do we have any questions at this point?
I do. Just a minute while I dig those up. That's it. And if anybody else has any, just go ahead. I don't have to wait for me.
Anybody else? Okay. Ms. Watson, did you have some or not?
An amendment, not a question.
Okay,
A potential
all right.
amendment, yeah.
Okay.
And while I'm looking for that.
Well, in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion. So I move that we pass the fiscal year 2025 budget, tax rate, and fee schedule resolution with the following amendments. First, that we amend Section 1, Schedule A, General Fund City Manager function to be reduced by $165,280. That's the Deputy City Manager line. We amend Section 2, Schedule A, the General Fund, and reappropriate fund equity to be reduced by $165,280. That we amend Section 7 to add Veterans Day, November 11th, 2024, as a free parking day, and that we hold in abeyance the following business license and permits fee schedules pending review by the city manager, the city attorney, and Mr. Meadows, if he's willing to accept that task.
I am, and actually that was my question.
And
was about that.
If I can go ahead then, I would hold in abeyance amusement and video arcade fees, dance hall fees, entertainment fees, restaurant fees, and takeout stores fees. And in addition, as part of the motion, declare a moratorium on the collection of any of those fees pending that review until November 1st. That's my motion, and I'll speak to the motion after we get rolling on this. So, is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay, moved by Brookover, seconded by Meadows. Discussion.
Do you know the total of dollars that you're asking be put on hold?
On the license, the fees?
Yeah.
I do not. That's one of the reasons I want to have the city manager at all take a look at that.
All right. Thanks.
Any other questions, discussion? Mr. Altman?
I was curious about the rationale for the fee abeyance motion. That's,
Because I've looked at that and also received communications from downtown business owners about whether our fee structure is A, fair, B, really makes sense in this day and age, and C, that's the communication I've received, but I also have my own concerns about whether those fees are actually related to our actual costs. So I'd like to have some examination of that, which is to say, once the study group looks at it, I suspect that there may be a recommendation for some of those fees to go up. So I just think, and I'm aware of the fact that, I think it was last year, but I might be a year off, the council did a moratorium for a while, and there was mass confusion from the licensees or the permit holders in terms of when the payments were made, and there was an attempt inartfully to collect fees after a certain date. So I just think we need to look at that and clarify that. So those are my reasons.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I wanted to take a look at the restaurant fees because we have what seems to be here, a significant jump when we're doing maximum permitted indoor occupancy. So with regard to the sort of the first section there, let's just say you have 150 people and a $400 fee. Basically, you're paying $2.60 as a fee for the individuals who are permitted to be in your the maximum in that particular restaurant. Then we jump to $5 per licensed occupant, then to $6.50, and then to $8. And I'm not sure what information we have that sort of justifies that type of increase. Do we have more policing just because you have a few more occupants in your facility? So I want to take a look at all of that, and that was a concern I had with regard to the fee structure here. Plus, we do have a state statute that says our fees have to reflect our actual costs, and I don't know what those actual costs are with regard to any of that stuff.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion?
Robert has his hand up.
Yes, sir.
Just for clarification, the city clerk notified me the renewal bills went out in the mail, so your motion is timely. We just would have to communicate with those businesses that you're putting them into a moratorium until November 1st. So.
I assume we can do that. So, Dr. Altman?
what would happen on November 1st? Would there be sort of a default action that we would take, or would we have to revisit this?
I would hope, it's an excellent question, and perhaps my motion doesn't consider all possibilities, but I would hope that the study group or task force, whatever you want to call it, would report back to us pretty expeditiously here, and we would then notify the licensees of any changes or whether they would have to pay them. And I think this was part of the problem either last year or 2 years ago, where there was there was a lot of confusion about the communications they received from the city. So I would hope that all of our work would be done and that we would have all that decided so that those payments would have to come in by November 1st.
Could I ask the maker a question?
Sure.
It did, okay. Got it.
Yes. Okay.
Just
Dr. Altman?
one other brief comment, if I may. My main concern about adding Veterans Day as a free parking day, this would be our first free parking day on the books when MSU is in full session. And what I'm concerned about is that if enough people catch wind and might not take that large a proportion, that there's free parking downtown, we could see the Bailey parking lot get crowded, for example. And crowd out people who might want to go to the downtown businesses. I think we can probably just monitor that if that's an issue that arises, but I hope we can monitor that.
Okay, anything else in terms of the motion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion on the budget passes unanimously. Mr. City Attorney, I wasn't supposed to do that with a roll call vote, was I, on the budget?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
As is, since it was unanimous.
Okay, moving on to the business agenda. Item 5.2, consideration of resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a cost-sharing contract between the Michigan Department of Transportation and the City of East Lansing for the resurfacing and related utility and pedestrian crossing improvements and addition of bike lanes on Hagedorn Road between the Red Cedar River Bridge and Bircham Drive, and authorize a project contingency. Mr. House.
Hey, good evening, Council. Scott House, Director of Public Works. Before you is a resolution for your consideration to enter into a cost-sharing agreement with MDOT for the aforementioned work on Hagedorn. The bike lanes would extend from Bircham Drive to Grand River Avenue per prior discussion, and there'd be 2 pedestrian islands. The project cost is that program through federal aid through Tri-County about approximately $1.1 million, if a city match of $240,000. We're asking for a contingency because when this goes to bid through MDOT, we might face more, and that would increase our cost share. And if this were to exceed the budget, there's provisions where Tri-County would be able to contribute some funds, but the lion's share would fall upon us, subject to any further questions.
All right, so give us the numbers again, please.
So it's a total award of approximately $1.1 million. The city share is $240,720. So
And the other money comes from?
This would be coming from the street fund, major street fund, and we're seeking a $300,000 contingency up front. So if we do exceed what the budget is, we'll be able to continue the award once the project's let in July.
Okay, I'm not sure you understood my question. So the cost sharing with the Michigan Department of Transportation, they're paying for the majority?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes,
so
sorry
that's
about
the
that. Yes.
700,000?
Yes, roughly. Yes.
Okay. And the money that we're putting in comes from our?
Major street fund.
Okay, which is our real money, right?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions?
Do one of the pages show where the pedestrian crosses are going to be?
So on these plans, for quick reference for that, there will be at the in vicinity of this intersection of Albert Avenue and Beach Street. And these plans aren't the, give me a second, I can find that. So if you go to plan sheet 17 of 38, and that's probably not labeled in your attachment, so it'd be approximately 2, 4, 5, 6. It's approximately the 10th page of the PDF.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see that island to the north there.
All right. Will you, it's kind of, not really visible. And I don't know which north, So my point is the crosswalk going to be in a place where your left person turning onto Hagedorn is going to possibly collide, or is it going to be like on the other side?
It's going to be offset, so you'll be able to. So the islands have to be there. They were located with turning radiuses to make sure there's no conflicts for driveways or the
Okay.
major streets.
Okay.
And once they get there, they'll field verify that as well.
Okay, any other questions? Do we have a motion?
I do have a few more questions.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yep.
go ahead.
I live on Hagedorn, and I want to confess that I did cut through the neighborhood because traffic is backing up these days to my house. And I need to make a left turn, for example, to get on the Bircham, and finding the pause just wasn't there. So I just wanted to confess I did do the speed limit when I entered the neighborhood. But my question then is the traffic lights. can you remind me, are the traffic lights and their timing or their arrows going to change, for better to adjust?
So in response, Hagedorn and Grand River, there's going to be no significant change. We have the ability to modify Bircham and Hagedorn, though.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do have
Go
a
ahead,
question,
please.
Because I know I voted for this earlier, and I have had some feedback, I guess, from people who live along Hagedorn and see it as a significant problem for them. So we will not have an additional light between Grand River and Bircham?
No.
Okay, and with regard to the merge that will take place at Hagedorn, I may be wrong now, but my memory is that that's the busiest intersection in Ingham County.
I would say it's the most dangerous, given the just the interaction of campus traffic, but not necessarily the most busy.
So the merge will take place at the park there, correct?
I believe it's about 400-foot taper that will allow for the merge.
Okay.
And we have this in similar areas as well. On Harrison, just north of Michigan Avenue, we have 2 lanes merging heading north, and they're able to do that and then merge as they reach the next major intersection to the north.
Do we have the same type of traffic counts at those locations?
At times, yes, because that's right at campus.
Okay, but we have more of a traffic count that's steady on Hagedorn, is that correct?
Hagedorn's more, you have the peaks in the AM and PM, definitely. Those are the most eventful times.
Okay. Anyway, that's my question. And I'm wondering, because we had this fight years ago over a light at Albert, was there any talk about adding a light at Albert?
So we had that, that's a great question. We discussed that, and that's something that could definitely be looked at in the future. I know there was, so we've heard it both sides. People were opposed to a light there. From my perspective, it could make a lot of sense. But I think let's see how this performs, and if we need a light to create more gaps, that might be something that would help spread
great.
traffic out.
Yeah, thanks. That's all I have.
Okay, any other questions? I move we pass a resolution to authorize the contract for the major street improvements on Hagedorn Road from the Red Cedar River Bridge to Bircham Drive, pedestrian islands on Hagedorn Road, and any related utilities located within the corporate limits of the City of East Lansing, Michigan.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. House. Okay, item 5.3, consideration of ordinance 1530, except for amendments related to EV charging, which would amend the zoning ordinance to make changes to items related to electricity. Specifically, the proposed amendments would clarify requirements for electronic display signs, set measurement and fixture standards for outdoor lighting, facilitate solar power generation in East Lansing, and set requirements for historic marker signs. Just to further elaborate, amendments related to electric vehicle charger requirements were referred for further discussion to the Transportation Commission and Commission on the Environment by City Council at their May 14th meeting. So in other words, we are only talking about the above enumerated items and not the amendments related to electric vehicle charger. Did I say that appropriately?
You're absolutely correct.
Mr. Barley?
Yes.
Don't ever tell me I'm absolutely correct. I will have a stroke.
You were mildly correct.
Yeah, that's better. That's more like East Lansing.
I have a question, if I can, not of Landon, but of the city attorney, because I'm kind of a little confused on what we're doing here. We would be considering ordinance 1530, but parts of that ordinance are not being considered this evening. So can we actually pass ordinance 1530, or do we have to pass a motion that will have ordinance 1530, but ultimately ends up with electric vehicle charger requirements in a different ordinance? at
Yeah,
some
that's
point.
correct. So when we first brought it as the first reading as ordinance 1530, it did have the electric vehicle charging requirements, which you did send to the committee. And so as a result, this will be the second amendment, or the second reading, which will, if you want to move forward, would be through a motion to to adopt the amended ordinance 1530.
Okay, and so just so we can all understand, in terms of the attachments, the actual ordinance we would be voting on tonight would be, quote, East Lansing Ordinance 1530 ZO Amendments CC 5/21/2024 clean. Is that correct? Because I have an adjusted 521 and I have a clean 521. Mr. Meadows asks an excellent question, as usual.
I can speak to that.
Yeah.
The both versions, the clean and the red line version, have the EV charging sections are completely removed. So those will be brought back at a future date. If you were to adopt the ordinance as shown in your packet, that would be as reflects your discussion last time.
Okay, but the ask here is for the, quote, clean, end quote, without the red lining in it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Does everybody get that?
Why are we moving, I mean, I understand there's going to be more time on the EV, but why do we need to move the whole thing tonight? I mean, minus the EV piece.
We have a couple of events coming up from DPW to do with solar, and they had expressed that it'd be lovely to have adopted amendments by the time of that event. We've also had some requests for historic marker signs, so those would be coming in if this were adopted.
Okay.
And then, can I have one more question?
Please, go ahead.
And this is for the city attorney. I brought this issue up with regard to condominiums, and just without looking at the Condominium Act, I'm hoping that you're more knowledgeable about that than I am. But we have three major, condominium housing projects that are single-family home type projects in the city. There's Abbott Parkside, there's Hawk Nest, and I think maybe Falcon West might be one as well. And then the one I live in, which is Abbott Woods. And I'm wondering whether anything about the Condominium Act would conflict with the language here that says you can, basically, anybody can put in solar wherever they live.
No, I think it's going to be more so very factual, specific to each condo development, because certain condo developments, like you referenced some that are more single family, where the condo owner may actually own the roof itself, as opposed to the shared buildings where it's going to be the association that owns it, and that would only determine who would apply to do the install and for the permits under our ordinance.
Is it possible for condominiums to limit where solar can go in on a particular home?
I'm sure they absolutely do have that authority through their own condominium bylaws, yeah.
Okay. Okay, that was my last question.
Okay, any other questions? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
I'm sorry, who did it? Meadows moves for passage of ordinance 1530, an ordinance to amend the East Lansing City Code. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Watson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is 5.4, consideration of the proposed property and casualty insurance for the period July 1st, 2024 through July 1st, 2025, in the combined amount not to exceed $791,466, and deposit $150,000 into the MMRMA Loss Fund, and authorize the city manager to sign.
So moved.
Okay? Did you want to present anything?
Absolutely not, if you want But Craig Manser from IBEX, who is an agent for MMRMA, is here to
I
answer any
apologize.
questions.
Don't apologize at all. I mean, I'm okay too. I'm fine with that.
Okay, well, I guess it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a number of questions. Not necessarily of you, frankly.
That's fine. I'll be here in case there is one. I'd be happy to answer anything.
So I have questions, I think, of the city manager and whoever the staffer is that worked on this. Give me a second here. So, the timing on this is not necessary, it's not necessary to pass this tonight, correct? It's July 1st start date for the policy.
So you're authorizing us to enter into the joint agreement with MMRMA tonight that would take effect on July 1st.
Okay. Couple questions after reading through this information. I'm curious about the coverage for Patriarch Park. We give a building value, which I assume is essentially the structures, but I'm not seeing anything about the potential replacement of our $1 million pickleball courts. And I can't see that there's any coverage for that and any coverage amount given.
So I understand that all property coverage is in the amount of $343 million, so that pickleball court.
Well, typically what happens with property insurance is property insurance insures structures and then what we also call structures other than a building, which in the insurance market can be called property in the open. And that would be things like netting, fencing, things like that. Flat paved surfaces are not covered. They never have been covered by really any insurance carrier that I know. Liability-wise, yes. If someone was to be injured on a pickleball court and sue the city, yes, that would be covered. If the pickleball court cracks because of something, then it would not be covered. Just natural heaving of cement and things like that are not typically covered.
Okay, so the answer to my question is the pickleball court surface is not covered by your policy, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And as I understand this, can you talk to me about the extortion coverage here? Because the way I was reading the policy, it looks to me like there isn't coverage for extortion.
Are you talking cyber? Cyber coverage?
Whatever extortion you're using the terminology in the policy.
The cyber coverage, the extortion is really ransomware. And that under a cyber, or what we call data breach and privacy liability. And you'll notice some in the different terminology, if you will, when you have a different policies like a directors and officers, we call it errors and omissions. It's part of our coverage, that type of thing. But the extortion coverage is really under the cyber policy, and that is ransomware coverage. It is covered to the full limit of $2 million, and it has a $25,000 deductible.
Okay, so then contrasting with that, what is a, quote, social engineering, end quote, loss?
Social engineering coverage is the phishing scams, if you will, of someone who may send an email. Let's say I send an email. I'm not an employee, but I'm a bad character. I hate to tell me that, but if I'm a bad character and I say to HR, hey, I'm Robert Bellman, I would like my banking information changed to this routing number and this account number. That's a phishing. That's a social engineering loss where they use social techniques such as emails, scams like that to try to get you to change information, financial information.
So what's our coverage for that?
$100,000 per occurrence with a $25,000 deductible.
Okay, so if we got scammed for, say, $50,000, we'd have to pay $25,000 of it ourselves, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then that gets me to the last really sort of series of questions.
Sure.
As I read this policy and understand in a different life, I had some experience with these policies and defending insurance companies, not yours, I don't think. But
Okay.
so as I understand the situation here, we give up all ultimate power on settlement of litigation to the insurance company, correct?
Well, and Robert may be able to attest to this, or even Mr. Chubb, but one of the things, the MMRMA is a governmental entity. We are a pooling organization, an authority that works only with governmental entities. So we only insure, in fact, Ingham County, City of Lansing, Clinton County, Eaton County, City of Mason, some of the other entities close to you. We only work with governmental entities, and that's in the commercial market what they call a hammer clause. And I guess technically, if you were giving us a really hard time in some lawsuit and you said, we're not going to do this, the MMRMA does retain that authority. We don't use that. We haven't used that in the past, and we think that it's something that we always work with our members to negotiate. We don't have stockholders. You are the shareholders. We don't have public end. We're not owned by anybody else. We are owned by the membership, so we feel that it's in our best interest to make sure that the members are happy and that the members have say in all the in settlements and or proceeding to litigation. We don't like to use that clause, and we don't.
Okay, so it would really make me happy if you could put that in writing, that you'll never use that clause?
I can't put that in writing. We do have that just in case, but we don't
And
use
so
that.
the other portion of that is that if we insist on a settlement position different than yours, then you essentially release us and we're on our own and we pay any liability if we decide we're not going to go with your advice, correct?
So, if I may, I had that
Sure.
experience in Bay City where under these documents, it's called members privilege. So MMRMA will come in with their top officials and tell you, we recommend you settle for this amount. You can choose not to. They cover up to the expenses incurred, and anything above the amount that they were going to insure would be on the city itself.
Right. And what happens, again, we are a governmental program, so we don't write, any other for-profit stores or any, businesses like that. So we work with you really, 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 really close. Yes, ultimately, you are correct. If we say we can settle this for $1,000 and you say, we're not going to settle this, we want to go to court and spend $100,000 in legal fees and possibly $1 million judgment, we're going to say, we can do it for $1,000 right now. We're going to give you the $1,000, and yes, you would have to do that on your own.
Okay, and I appreciate the segue.
Sure.
So the other way I read this policy is we have no control over the selection of the attorneys that you're going to use for the defense of our cases?
Well, we have two law firms that we primarily use, and those two law firms are experts in governmental coverage. We've used them for years. We have multiple attorneys, some that are experts in zoning, some that are experts in, jail type exposure, some that are law enforcement lawyers, that type of thing. So we have multiple lawyers that are with each different firm that specialize in different areas. Sometimes when we use outside counsel would be if there's a conflict of interest or an additional party that needs multiple representation and we have to go outside of the two primary firms. But yeah, we typically use those firms because they have not only have the expertise in governmental defense, they also abide by our rate structure, and our rate structure is favorable for the city.
Okay, well, thanks for bringing that up, because
Yes.
What are the two law firms?
The law firms are Cummings, McClory, Davis, and Atcho, and then Rosati,
Schultz.
Rosati, Schultz, Jopik, and Amsbuehler.
Yeah.
Okay, and as I understand it, I'm going to call it retention, but our retention on any piece of litigation is essentially $100,000?
Correct.
Okay, which means if we defend something through you, we're going to bite the bullet on the first $100,000, including attorney's fees, other incidental costs, and settlement, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so what are the current hourly rates for the two law firms you're using?
I believe the hourly rates right now are, and they've been going back and forth, it's either $175 or $200.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. City Manager, I have some questions for you then. Has anybody in the city done an analysis of what the differential in the hourly rates for the attorneys would have been in, say, the last year or 2 years in terms of our litigation costs at the hourly rate we're paying our current law firm as opposed to the hourly rate that we would pay to the attorneys who'd be selected for us?
No, we have not done
Okay.
an analysis.
And the differential between this policy and I think it's Liberty is effectively $25,000?
At their current rate, we have not gotten their renewal.
Okay, so we don't have a bid from Liberty. We've asked for one and don't have it yet?
We asked for one, and we're told that we will get it after June 1st. And our agreement with Gallagher, we could exercise termination rights on that agreement through May 30th. And so they don't want to provide us the renewal information until after their agreement gets reactivated on June 1st.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm just, no offense to you, and thanks for
No,
coming
none at
tonight.
all. No problem.
I'm just concerned that in terms of actually making a comparison, and one other thing is the policy we currently have has a retention of $50,000 on most things, correct?
Our deductible under the current policy is $50,000.
All right, so we're switching from a deductible of $50,000 to a deductible of $100,000 on any specific given piece of litigation, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. I'm just, the motion's on the table. I guess I'm going to speak to the motion, which is I'm concerned that we need more comparative data here to make a knowledgeable choice. So. Okay, other questions? Okay. Voting on the motion. Let's do a roll call, please.
Councilmember Altman,
Yes.
Councilmember, pardon me, Meadows,
Yes.
Councilmember Watson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Singh,
No.
Mayor Burkover.
No. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very
Appreciate it.
much. Thanks for your time.
Okay. That moves us to the end of the regular agenda. Do we have a motion relative to a closed session?
I have a motion.
Thank you.
I move that we enter into closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268 sub 1 sub E to discuss strategy with our attorneys in the pending matter of James Hios et al., the City of East Lansing, Michigan Supreme Court case number 165763.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Altman, seconded by Meadows. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Altman,
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows,
Yes.
Councilmember Watson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Singh,
Yes.
Mayor Burkover.
Yes. Okay, we'll be adjourning to closed session. We will only be coming back to adjourn the meeting, so. And do we have anybody here from Foster? Oh, there you are. Now, do we have, sorry. All set? All right, we're back in session. Do we have a motion?
To return to session.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Councilmember Altman?
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows?
Yes.
Councilmember Watson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Singh?
Yes.
Mayor Brookover?
Yes, meeting's adjourned. Thanks, folks.